Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Monday, January 12th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dure Show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in today's show to hear all the relevant groundbreaking news here in America and around the world, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Don't forget to follow the show over wherever you might get your podcast, and again, please share it. It's available now on all streaming apps. Let's begin the best hour of radio, uncensored and ready to go. I like to start off today's show talking about my thoughts about the Golden Globes yesterday that took place, as I'm sure many of you listening had watched. And again, I want to break it down for you in great detail today. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't watch that if you had paid me to do it. And again, who cares who gets an award in Hollywood today? Do you care? Of course not. Who would? Win an award, don't win an award. I'm more worried about the March revenue of last year's box office results that dropped 50%. I'd be a little bit more worried about that than somebody getting an award on television. Just my thoughts, of course. You know, it doesn't help that Colbert lost, $40 million a year just keeping that show on? God, who watches that? Late night isn't even funny anymore. That's the problem. Again, it's a clear case of, like anything the left touches, it destroys. And again, I have to be honest with you, unless it's a certain director or, a certain actor or what have you, I'm not watching it. I'm not watching it. Unless there's some really good dialogue or hook in it, I'm not watching it. I'm not even going to pay the money. Who could even afford it anymore? But, there hasn't been any really good new directors, I've noticed, or even talented new actors that come around. Every decade or so, there'd be somebody new, someone brand new style. Hasn't happened in decades in Hollywood. No new talent, no new ingenuity, no new signature directing, cinematography, or anything of the such. Nothing authentic. It's worthless in many regards. Not that that's a good sign for Hollywood, It's just simply not good. And, as a movie lover like myself, it's hard to see that. I go for older movies now. Even the black and whites I'll watch over anything out today. The stories, the music, the acting is so much better in many regards, too. Because you can't fake it. You couldn't fake it back in the day. You had to be good. The story had to be good. It had to be interesting, exciting. It kept you in the seat, but not anymore. That's simply not the case. They use the, special effects and what have you. It's just not as good. All right, enough about that. My first article today I want to discuss coming from Paul Craig Roberts, just to set the tone for today's show. We will be talking about what's happening in our foreign policy. And he begins by saying what we should be talking about for really the new catchphrase for the Trump administration's foreign policy mantra. It's do as I say, or I will bomb you into the Stone Age. I think it's a clever title, don't you? Now, according to the news reports, obviously President Trump has now said that he's going to take Greenland because it's necessary to the United States national security and has ordered the U.S. military to prepare for an invasion of Greenland. I can't even begin to talk about how insane that is to you. The Danes own Greenland, obviously. There's, I think, roughly 50,000 people that live there. And we're going to, take it by force? What is this about? What is the real reason for this? It's hegemony. It's global hegemony, folks. That's all it really comes down to. It has nothing to do with national security. And again, there is no reference to a national security documents that would even support Trump's claim that Greenland is necessary for it. An invasion on Greenland. It's a NATO country, folks. And again, it would just be another act of war that we've continued to see in the last couple of weeks. And of course, under the Constitution, that would require a declaration of war by the U.S. Congress. Not that we've needed them since World War II, right? It's unbelievable. I thought 2026 was going to be maybe a year of reflecting on how 2025 went with the continuation of the war in Ukraine, the war in the Middle East that continues on, the onslaught of the Palestinians that the mainstream news media never talks about. When Trump was asked on New Year's Eve, what is your New Year's resolution? And he said peace. I said to myself, okay, let's pray to God. And he means it. That we're actually going to pursue peace and not more senseless wars and getting ourselves entangled in foreign affairs that we don't need to be involved in. That simply hasn't been the case since January 1st, though. But, in the 21st century, Paul Craig Roberts goes on to say, U.S. presidents have declared countries to be threats without explaining why they are threats. And look no further than Barry Honolulu in 2015, declaring that Venezuela to be an unusual and extraordinary threat to U.S. national security without providing a damn bit of explanation to that threat. How the hell is Venezuela going to threaten the United States, folks? It's 2,000 miles away from us? What the hell are they going to do? Other than nothing. That's it. That's all it is. Now, some Russians who, still hope for a Washington-Moscow peace agreement interpret Trump's threat to Greenland as Trump's intent to break up NATO and thereby arrive at a peaceful solution with Russia. Now, that's ridiculous in and of itself. The reason we're in Greenland, or in Venezuela for that matter, and we'll explore that much later, is to stifle, to upend trade with BRICS. That's what it comes down to. Now, European NATO members have now come out after hearing these news reports and are discussing the possibility of sending military forces now to Greenland's defense. Can you believe this insanity? I can't even believe I can't even believe we're talking about this. We're invading Greenland because it's a national security benefit to the United States. Is Russia, China, Iran, any of these countries doing anything in Greenland right now? Are they setting up military bases? Are they putting nuclear weapons in Greenland to hit the United States? What's going on here that we need Greenland? It's an ice sheet, for God's sakes. Well, other natural resources there too, though. Don't forget that. But we're just going to take it from Denmark? We're just going to go in and say this is ours now? It's now part of the United States? Who is advising the president on this, by the way? What genius is doing this? How much is this going to cost us, too, by the way? They never tell you that. Of course, until it happens. No wonder the Pentagon failed its, last 8 audits that it had? Yeah, exactly. All right. So, I gotta tell you, I'm disappointed with what President Trump's doing in the foreign theater right now. I cannot believe we're actually even considering invading a NATO country right now. We're supposed to be in alliance with these countries, and we're going to invade one? Why don't we just take the UK then? National security, baby, come on in. We'll set up bases there. I mean, this is so utterly insane. It's beyond me. I don't see how this could be a benefit to us. I really don't. And the amount of money you have to pour in, of course, put the troops there, put the bases there. And you even have the Danish prime minister saying that they would work with us. If we want to put a military base there, they'll work with us. If we want to extract resources, they'll work with us. So they're being diplomatic, and we're saying, we're going to take you by force unless you give us this land. After all, it's our land, right? Everything's our land. Right? Venezuelan's oil is ours, all this nonsense. It really is mind-boggling to such an extreme, folks. I really don't understand this at all. How is this make America great again? How is this benefiting us at all by acting this way or, again, being portrayed in such a way? Where's the cooperation? Where is the diplomacy between other countries? Where's the unilateralism? It's nowhere. It really just shows U.S. hegemony still leads number one. The Wolfowitz Doctrine is still in full effect. And now it's getting more and more out of control as time goes on. It doesn't show any sign of stopping at all, too, by the way. And the world sees this. Russia sees this. China sees this. Iran sees this. Any of our other foes see this. And yet we're supposed to be thinking that Iran is going to strike a deal with us after what we did to them back in June of last year. We came to the table and said, okay, we'll meet with you on Sunday. This is the day we'll meet with you. We'll make concessions. We'll set this up. We'll come to terms with your nuclear program. Everything was on the table to get what we wanted. And then we allowed and approved Israel to go in and start bombing them. Killing nuclear scientists, killing the negotiator, killing civilians, and then we championed it. Iran's not going to trust us in any respect at all anymore. How could they? How stupid would that be? Again, I don't know how Trump feels that he's going to enforce these threats, again, all over Latin America now. And now, of course, to a NATO country, and now to Iran. How are we going to do this, folks? How are we going to uphold this? It's going to be very interesting to see how this all turns out. Again, I think he's bitten off far more than he can chew, and I'm going to get into reasons why I believe that. This is completely irresponsible, folks. That's my own take on this, and anyone championing this is a complete schmuck, by the way. Again, I don't see how Greenland is anything to us at all, except it's going to be a big cog in the wheel moving forward. And again, to sustain that, what are we going to do? Block shipping lanes if Russia's in the Arctic? I don't understand this at all. And again, this is what I first see this becoming. Intercepting more ships is like what we've seen in, obviously, the Caribbean, in that region, of course. And now we're going to try to control that area as well. That's what I see in the future for this. That's the only thing I could see. Blocking shipping lanes, taking ships, trading oil. Well, we're going to have to take that. Hey, if you're taking that Iranian oil, we're going to have to take that from you. It's going to be very, 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 very scary to see what happens and see who capitulates and, again, who is provoked enough to do something about it. Just my take on it, folks. So really a bad situation, of course. And then we have the security fears about, obviously, what's taking place in Greenland. The minerals. I'm looking at an NBC article right now. And they said Trump allies have cited the island's continued role in missile defense infrastructure, accusing Denmark of leaving it vulnerable to a potential Russia and Chinese influence. Where? Where is this influence? Nowhere. They can't tell us anything. Where's this influence that they're somehow going to be doing anything in Greenland? What the hell are they going to get in Greenland? It's unbelievable. It says here, to hear President Trump tell it, a push to take control of Greenland is a national security necessity, critical to reinforcing control of the Arctic against possible threats from Russia and China. There it is. Again, I told you the same thing. We're going to try to stonewall, blockade, I guess, shipping lanes. I don't understand this. It says for American allies and Greenlanders themselves, however, Trump's threats to seize the semi-autonomous Danish territory cut much deeper and threaten to shatter decades-old principles of Western defense cooperation. So now we're going to attack our own. We're going to attack a NATO country. How utterly ridiculous. Anyways, I digress. Let's look at what's happening in Iran. This is heating up moment by moment. I told you last week it was Venezuela, and now it's going to become Iran very, very soon, folks. And they have all the right pretexts in store just for us to go in there, it seems. It says here in a Breitbart article, it says, Trump says Iran wants to negotiate as the death toll in protest rises to at least 572. Okay. Now, what the hell are they going to negotiate? Why would they believe us after what we did to them? We bombed them, for God's sakes, when we're supposed to be negotiating. We bombed their nuclear sites. We've killed civilians. As I said before, we killed Ali Shamkhani, their head negotiator. We killed nuclear scientists alike. Why would they believe us? Why would they believe us? That's another thing. Why would they? Are they that stupid they would actually think we were going to be honest and sincere in any type of diplomacy with them? I think not. But it says here the United States President Donald Trump says Iran wants to negotiate after the United States threatened to strike this country over its crackdown on protesters. Trump says Iran wants to negotiate as the death toll persists. I don't buy this for a second. Not for 1 second. I don't think they take us seriously. I got to be honest with you. From the people I listen to, from the geopolitical strategists, the analysts that I listen to, former CIA officials and analysts there as well, when they talk about Iran, Russia, China, they don't take us seriously to the extent that we believe they take us seriously. Now, I do believe they want diplomacy with us and they want to trade, but I don't believe they take us seriously in some of these threats that President Trump seems to be making right now. So it says here, Iran had no direct reaction to Trump's comments, which came after the foreign minister of Oman said in a long, exchange between Washington and Tehran. Traveled to Iran this weekend. It also remains unclear just as to what Iran could promise, particularly as President Trump has set a strict demand over its nuclear program and its ballistic missile arsenal. Now, how the hell are we going to go in there and tell them what they can use for ballistic missiles? That's another thing I don't understand here. How are we going to go to a sovereign nation and say, you know what? You can't have nuclear weapons. You can't have any type of ballistic missiles to defend yourself against any type of foreign threat. You can't control your airspace. You can't do any of this. Again, it's crucial for their own national defense, is it not? Well, but we apparently don't give a damn about this. So we look at what's taking place on the streets there, and we see clearly that the CIA and Mossad alike are on the ground in Iran, fomenting this regime change for, again, political purposes, and of course Israel's as well. I told you before that Netanyahu has wanted to take out, I guess, Iran as its last stand, it seems, in the Middle East. And to get his own way, he wants to take out Iran. He's wanted Iran for a long time now. This is a decades-old thing between Netanyahu and, again, Iran. And again, I say this to you while, again, I don't back the current regime. I see that the media infatuation with these protests are for what they are. It's propaganda. It's a color revolution. That's what it really is, right? You had Mike Pompeo, former CIA director and former Secretary of State under Trump's first term, actually go out on X and say the following. Happy New Year to every Iranian in the streets, also to every Mossad agent walking beside them. I mean, just why does he just send us a blueprint about what's going on there? I mean, my God. So what's actually really happening in Iran? That's my question, right? That's what you're asking yourself. What's really going on? We're seeing in the news media, we're seeing on Breitbart, we see on Fox News, we see on Just the News, all these sites, right? Conservative sites. They're showing you the demise of Iran. Is that really what's happening, though? And again, is it what we're seeing in the media, and social media particularly, telling us what's really happening? Is it authentic? Let's begin with number one. Start with the protest, right? Let's begin with when these protests actually began. How about that? About roughly 2 weeks ago. Right as Netanyahu comes to Mar-a-Lago, right? For his fifth visit to meet with President Trump. God knows what he's asking him to do now. We can only make an assumption that, of course, he's talking about Iran. That's my guess. So, again, we see the protests start up in the streets of Tehran, and, of course, other cities as well, largely over the weak economy. Their inflation numbers are very high right now. They're up to 35% on average. Very high, of course. So these types of protests have happened before, just so we're all clear on this. And just, again, like in America. We see the shift in purchasing power that can cause businesses to close. People can't afford goods or services, and the owners can't turn a profit. It's a big problem. We all can agree on that. So, like any other time when this has taken place, they took to the streets, these citizens and business owners alike took to the streets. And as a result of this, the instability in the markets, again, were number one. It had nothing to do with the government itself. They were upset with President Pezeshkian, whose his own government malfeasance in this area led to a lot of this. And again, I'll also say, too, our sanctions against Iran, of course, don't really help their government or economy function properly as well. So first day of the protest, things are peaceful, no issues at all, no calls for the Ayatollah to step down. But then you see on the second day, we see that the climate is starting to change in the evening. You had anti-Islamic regime groups, such as the Kurds, again, who the CIA is, again, very close with. There's lots of ties there. The Kurds helped us fight ISIS in many regards. So there's a connection between the two groups. Okay, we can understand that. Then we have the Baluchis in the eastern portion of the country. And again, you have other groups, again, who also don't support the current status quo. The Islamic Republic, you have the MEK, these Mujahideen al-Chaq. Many, again, who, again, run this group called the National Coalition of Iran of Resistance. And they are the group that is putting out what we're being told right now, by and large. That's what we're seeing right now. So if they want the people in the West to believe that the majority of Iranians want regime change, this is what you would believe then. You see what's happening in the streets. You look to the anti-ICE protests that are, again, taking place in America. Would you look at that and say, this is a good representation of America right now? Of course you would. Most people don't give a damn about this. They're not in the streets right now. Would you say that that's a cause to have Donald Trump leave office or anything of the sort? Of course not. But it's easy to show footage of several thousand people in the street and say, look at this support, look at this, it's all collapsing, it's going down. There's no support for the Ayatollah, he better step down. The government's in shambles. Again, not happening. I'm telling you how it is. This is what I'm being told. It's simply not happening as we see it. So again, we have these false reports of this propaganda that the Ayatollah now wants to flee to Russia. Again, all smoke and mirrors. And then, of course, you had the neocons over the weekend making their rounds on the soapboxes, of course. All weekend, you had people saying that the government was collapsing. Then you get people like Lindsey Graham of South Carolina openly calling for the Ayatollah to step down or be killed, telling that he's going to be killed. I mean, what? This guy's the same one that came out and said that someone should take out Vladimir Putin. Absurdity. Again, absurdity. President Trump then calling on the government not to kill any peaceful protesters, or else we would have to then intervene. Again, for mainly regime change purposes, to save the people of Iran, if you will, despite, again, the U.S. being, again, the world's greatest military. It's not going to happen. We don't have the means to do this right now, folks. A regime change in Iran? How would this happen? Again, it reflects what we're seeing in Venezuela right now. I listened to Larry Johnson this morning telling Andrew Napolitano on Judging Freedom, and he said there's two things you have to have anytime you have a regime change in a country. And the two things are, number one, you have to have control over the military in that country. Number one. Because in a lot of these countries, and like ours itself, these are the people that control a lot of the arms. They control all this, and they can control order, and they're trained to do it. So therefore, that's necessary. These are the people that wield the power in the countries. That's why our founding fathers wanted us to have the Second Amendment and for everyone to have the same arms as the government. Now, of course, we've diluted that to this day, sadly enough. But nonetheless, that holds power in these countries, by and large. The other thing you need to have, again, that's completely necessary, you have to have control over the intelligence body, and we don't have either. Even if you were to take out the Ayatollah today, even if you were to remove President Pezeshkian, you can't take over the government as it exists. Just like we can't do that in Venezuela right now. You've had this decapitation strike against Nicolas Maduro and his wife, but every other faction in the government is still operating. You still have the military that backs Maduro. You still have the cabinets, the politicians in positions of power. So you don't have all those factors, you can't run the country. And if you're going to try to do that, you're going to have a lot of people on the ground, folks. Just, again, thought I'd share that with you, just so we're all clear on this. By the way, you also have President Pezeshkian. I saw him on social media. He's been walking with the protesters in the streets as of late, again, despite them being displeased with him. So is it really an effort by the peaceful protesters for regime change? It's not. It's these other factions. It's these other factions that are supported by the CIA. Again, the MEC, all these people, Mossad, all these groups coming out now. And a lot of people will be paid to do certain things, attack police, set fire, all these other things. And it's a big problem, of course. But now some of you are saying, well, Gervais, come on. They're killing these protesters. You just read the number yourself. What is it? 572 people have been killed thus far. And I say, okay. 572 people have been killed. But these are the people that are with guns. They're largely shooting at or killing police or at other people in the streets, of course. They're setting fires to buildings and cars. You see the pictures. I don't need to show it to you. Or they're attacking military bases right now. Is the Iranian government just going to let civilians come in and attack their military bases at a time when Israel wants to come in and start bombing them? I don't think so, folks. I don't think that, again, that's national security right then and there. That would never be tolerated in the United States either, just so we're all clear on this, or any other sane country. So we've got these two things going on at the same time, and we're aligning it with one cause, the cause people want you to be about. Regime change, taking out the existing government. Netanyahu would love that. Don't you think so? Why else would he have come to Mar-a-Lago? Why else would he go? That's what they talked about. In and of itself, that's what they discussed. Regime change in Iran. Netanyahu wants this. He thought he would have caught Iran off guard last time. And again, they did catch them off guard. I will not deny that. And they did do some damage, but they were not expecting Iran to retaliate in the way that they did. And that's why the 12-day war ended so quickly, because we couldn't get them supplies that quick. They weren't expecting us. They weren't expecting Iran to retaliate in such a way that we couldn't counter what they were doing. And by that I mean Israel. Two of their three major ports were hit. How do you think that did for trade? Parts of Tel Aviv. 30% of Tel Aviv was hit, folks. They were not expecting this. Power was going out all throughout Israel at the time. We hit refineries. We hit power plants. And finally, after 12 days, I said, we can't keep doing this. We can't keep doing what we're doing right now. And by the way, it was also causing us $275 million every single day of this conflict, by the way, because we fund their entire military operation, pay their veteran benefits, all that good stuff, right? And we also pay for their college, too. Just thought I'd tell you that, too. Just so you understood what's going on here. So naturally, we had to come and say, okay, we're gonna drop some bombs. We'll let you drop some bombs and we'll call it off. All right, we'll call for a ceasefire. I told you before, Israel has never held a ceasefire with anybody, ever. Just so we're clear on all this. So it needed to stop, though. And that was our way to get it to stop. That's why it happened. But make no mistake, Israel wants Iran gone. They want their existing government gone. They want this Pahlavi or whatever the hell his name is. I don't think he's ever even been to Iran. But he's the Shah's former son. The former Shah's son, excuse me. And he wants to be anointed as a president, just like we're, again, going to maybe anoint Marco Rubio as the new viceroy of Venezuela. This is where we are right now. So these regime changes, they're coming on quick. Make no mistake, Iran is going to be the next target of this. But again, I find this hypocritical for many reasons. We're talking about people getting killed in the streets, and that's a reason for us to come in. I mean, look at what we're seeing right now in, again, the Middle East. We turn a blind eye to what's happening inside Gaza. You've seen the pictures. I don't have to show it to you. We have 72,500 people killed. 80% at least are innocent people that had nothing to do with October 7th at all. Most of it is women and children, by the way. And don't give me this bull crap. I hear this all the time. Sometimes I want to punch my television screen when I see this. People come out and say, well, it's collateral damage. They're going after Hamas. Hamas is in these buildings. And yet we're killing people. It's collateral damage. It's not intended, but they're in these buildings too. And we've got to get Hamas. And I sit there and go, oh, okay, all right. And then I think to myself, all right, well, what about the AI drones that they have? Lavender and Gospel is what they're called. And they can find someone, they can target somebody. And they have a kill ratio of the target That one person and 100 other people. So if 100 other people are around this target in this kill zone, right, this airstrike, it will go on as long as it kills 100 other people. So if 100 innocent people are around this person, the strike is to go on and kill everybody in that area. And by the way, they're also using these advanced drone systems, this technology that they have, to simulate, and again, I've heard this, to simulate women screaming, children screaming, next to these makeshift tents that they have now. And these refugee centers now that all these people are kind of sequestered into. So men run out. They think a woman is screaming or in distress. And men in these areas are running out to help whoever they think it is. And they're getting gunned down. In the corridor going to one of these refugee sites, these humanitarian aid sites, one of the last couple that are even around inside Gaza, they're getting shot at. People are getting shot at as they make their way through these corridors, the Marab corridor. Is that collateral damage too? How are children, again, this is being reported by doctors that go and volunteer, they say they have children brought in, they have gunshot wounds to the head, the chest. Is that collateral damage too, by the way? I'm confused. I don't understand it. Just a thought. I don't understand this. Has the Western media said a damn thing about what I'm telling you right now? Not a damn thing. Then we can also talk about the lack of humanitarian aid going into the region. Their government bragged about not sending in a damn thing for 3 months. Smotrich saying, hey, we haven't sent anything in 3 months, and we shouldn't. Danny Danon said we shouldn't send any milk for babies inside Gaza because they're going to grow up become terrorists. Has Trump said a word about this? Has he given them any ultimatums? Has he talked about regime change in Israel? Or that a new leader needs to be appointed? Of course not. He hasn't said a word about it. Now, you'll hear on the news, oh, it's not a genocide. It's not a ethnic cleansing, even though they've called for all of it, by the way. They've said all of Gaza will become Jewish. They're still shooting people every single day, right? This whole ceasefire is nonsense, too, by the way. They're still killing people every single day inside Gaza. 10 people, 25 people, it doesn't matter. Nobody seems to report on it anymore. But, I get the figures. And again, this death toll is going up. And again, it's going to be very low because you have no idea who's under all this rubble. Over 80% of Gaza is in ruins right now. You have no idea who's under all this rubble until, of course, you sift through it. So we don't even know if this 72,500 number is even remotely close to being accurate. And again, it probably is not. So there you go. There you go, though. But if Iran kills violent rioters, I should say, then it's cause for us to go in. But if Israel kills people in Lebanon, right, and their infamous beeper attack, which is, again, a terrorist attack, killed 12 civilians, innocent people, killed, I think, 30 Hezbollah affiliates, and, of course, injured another 4,000 civilians. Isn't that, folks, terrorism, if I'm not mistaken? Using violence for political purposes and agendas? Yet Mike Pompeo couldn't wait to get to X and say, what a brilliant strategy. That was great. Oh, that's wonderful. Now, again, if Iran did that to Israel, what would we say? We'd say it's a terrorist attack, and it would be. You can't make this stuff up, folks. You really can't. Anyways, I just thought I'd share that portion of what's happening inside of Iran right now. And again, I'll update you as I get more information as the time obviously shares it with us. But right now, you're seeing on social media, you're getting a lot of influencers coming out and saying, look how wonderful, look at the regime change. It's happening just like in Venezuela. Same thing. They're trading one flag for another flag. They're saying how great this would be. And I say, okay, all right. Again, if the Iranian people want regime change, that's up to them. They need to be the ones that do this. We should not be deciding their fate for them. If they want regime change, if they don't want to live under Islamic rule, that's up to them. But one other thing that's important, I want you all to remember this. Iran's one of the last countries on earth that does not have a Rothschild-controlled central bank. That means they control their own currency. And you better believe if they get a Pahlavi, or whatever the hell his name is, into power there, that will absolutely 100% be installed. And by the way, Venezuela does not have a Rothschild-controlled central bank. And by the way, usury is illegal in Venezuela, if you can even believe that. So don't think these are all just coincidence that we all of a sudden give a damn about Venezuelans or Iranians or really anybody in any other country. There are goals to this, folks. There are agendas. And again, this is how they control people. By the way, Syria doesn't have a central bank just yet, but don't worry, they'll get one soon. And then there will be utopia on Earth, I'm very, very sure, right? Probably not. Probably not. All right. So, oh, by the way, Trump came out and was speaking about Venezuela. Let me see if I have the clip for you. I think I got it. Let me see really quickly. This should be it. I'll play it for you so we can, again, understand what's really happening in his idea. And again, all things lead to, we're going to go in very, very soon. Take a listen to this.
There seem to be some people killed that aren't supposed to be killed. These are violent, if you call them leaders, I don't know if they're leaders or just they rule through violence. But we're looking at it very seriously. The military's looking at it. And we're looking at some very strong options. We'll make a determination. Some of the protesters were killed through the stampeding. I mean, there's so many of them. And some were shot. We're getting a full report. I'm getting an hourly report. And we're going to make a determination.
So there it is. There it is. In a nutshell, there it is. We'll make a determination soon. I'm getting reports by the hour. So what number of people supposedly killed by the government is necessary for the United States to intervene? That's a big question. Is it going to be any people? Is it going to be one person? Is it 1,000? Is it 2,000? What number? How much more is too much for the United States? That's the question. That's what you have to ask yourself. At what point do we say this is enough to go in for regime change? And what will happen as a result of that? Are they going to kill the Ayatollah? Are they going to, again, seize President Pezeshkian? Take him back to D.C. for God knows what crime? Who knows? Yep, it's all coming to a head right now, folks. So expect that to happen very, very soon. Again, I've been told by people that live in Iran that this time they're not going to be caught off guard, though. Again, just thought I would share that with you, just so you know. All right, moving on. The other country of, I guess, interest of the United States. This is in Zerohedge. Says President Trump urges Cuba to strike a deal with the United States before it's quote-unquote too late, after oil money is cut off from Venezuela. Well, says U.S. President Donald Trump on January 11th told Cuba that it should forge a deal with the United States. Now that Washington has pushed Venezuela to cut off its oil supply and money from the communist-run island. Says after the United States military captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro on the 3rd, interim Venezuelan leader Delcy Rodriguez has redirected oil deliveries to the United States. Again, cutting this oil off, obviously the supply to Cuba, again, which they've relied on for quite some time, obviously presents some significant pressure to this tiny country, right, in the Gulf. And President Trump has gone on to say Cuba lived for many years on large amounts of oil and money from Venezuela. In return, Cuba provided security services. And we know this is true because we killed a bunch of them during the January 3rd removal and decapitation strike of the president. So he says, for the last two Venezuelan dictators, but not anymore. Okay, so now we're just going to cut off resources from Venezuela. We'll force them into whatever negotiations I guess we want with them. I don't know what we would trade with them, or what we do with them, or what we would demand of them. I'm not sure. But he said there will be no more oil or money going to Cuba. Zero. I strongly suggest they make a deal before it's... What deal? That's what I want to know. What deal are we making? But then he steps down, that they're not a communist country. That they just stop buying Venezuelan oil. What is the deal? How are we going to enrich Cuba right now? So here, Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez, the leader of the Cuban regime, responded to Trump in a series of social media posts on January 10th, saying that the communist nation is ready to defend the homeland to the last drop of blood. He said, those who blame the communist revolution for the severe economic shortages we suffer should hold their tongues in shame. So will he play ball? Will he not play ball? What is going to happen as a result of this? Are we going to send in troops to Cuba? I think we tried that once before, didn't we? How did that turn out? I don't think too well. You know, it's really absurd to me, folks, that we continue on this path now. I guess Cuba now threatens our national security, just like Mexico and Colombia do, among other countries. And I guess it's for the taking. I played you that clip last week. They said, what do you think about international law? I said, I don't really need it. Whatever I decide, it's okay. If I wake up and I decide we need 50% tariffs on Chinese goods, it's 50%. The hell with Congress. And if I want to go into Venezuela, I go into Venezuela. I'll go into Cuba, go to Mexico, Nicaragua, Colombia. Why not? Greenland, take it. It's all there for the taking, right? After all, we can just bully them right out. Doesn't matter. If I want to go into Iran tomorrow, I'll just make up a reason. Hey, they got to 600. That was my number. 600 dead was my number, so therefore I've heard this report and we're going in. Hell of a foreign policy, folks. Absolutely ridiculous. You know, it's not getting any better anywhere, folks. It really isn't. So it looks like, I guess we want to control Cuba for God knows what reason. It doesn't really say in this article. I don't know what we would do with Cuba. I don't know. But they say when a population is really hungry, what it does is your day-to-day is just about survival. You don't think about politics. All you think about is putting bread on the table for your family. On the other hand, people can become so desperate they lose their fear and they take to the streets. So what? We're going to have, again, people in the streets in Cuba now? We'll use that as a reason to go in and take over the government? Who knows, folks? By the way, I want to talk about the oil in Venezuela today. It's a topic of great concern for, obviously, myself, but obviously because we're involved in this, and we're spending quite a bit of money on this. But I want to talk about what's happening now. And this is, again, very, very important. So we got the alleged facade against, obviously, Nicolas Maduro. Seems to be now falling apart, thanks to Attorney General Pam Bondi. She actually went on and removed her indictment of the leader, saying that he was the head of a cocaine drug cartel called Cartel de los Salos. That's what it's supposed to be called. He's supposed to be the kingpin of this. Now, again, that and this falling apart in the concept that the DEA cites in their own findings on their own website, by the way, showing that Venezuela, if at all, makes up for very little of the cocaine that would even enter the United States. Most of it obviously coming from Mexico, and of course even the distribution of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamines, fentanyl, marijuana, other illicit drugs into the United States. Yet we're going after Venezuela. It's mind-boggling, I know. So again, is Pam Bondi going to somehow allege that this president was, again, trying to kill Americans still? I don't understand this. The whole case seems to be falling apart in and of itself. Or even the bizarre claim that the machine gun charges that she alleges that they, again, are used to kill Americans when he's never even stepped foot in the United States, again, is beyond me. And again, they wouldn't even traffic the drugs if it even started in Venezuela. They wouldn't be the ones trafficking the drugs into the United States. The vast majority comes from Mexico. And the other country, by the way, isn't a country. It's our own territory. It's Puerto Rico. So are we going to, do something in Puerto Rico now? What's going to happen? We're going to overthrow their governor too? Who knows? But those are the two countries where these drugs come in from. So again, this case is, again, falling apart in and of itself. Again, I don't see how any of this will even stand even in the shady Southern District of New York. Yet here we are. Oh, by the way, our own State Department, too, on Saturday said that it is not going to be operating the embassy in Venezuela, but in now Bogota, Colombia, because it's, quote-unquote, isn't safe. So I thought we saved the Venezuelan people, folks. I thought everyone was happy and everything's hunky-dory now. No, it's not safe. We've got to change we've got so much control. We've got to take our embassy and put it in another country. Colombia, that produces 90% of the cocaine that comes in the U.S. Something ridiculous like that. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, does it, folks? Anyways. So the real reason we are in Venezuela, just so we're all clear, is, of course, the resources. That's number one. But we needed this to kind of give us the leverage to go in and take out the president. And again, I believe President Trump felt that if we perform this decapitation strike on Maduro, everything else would fall into line, including the Maduro government, right? And if he falls, if that government falls, everything will be fine. Well, that hasn't happened. And again, as President Trump writes on Truth Social that he is the acting president of Venezuela, that simply isn't the case, obviously. But I mean, this dry humor isn't really going to go too far, I don't think. And you can see the lack of planning in all of this, too, by the way. And again, it starts with the oil deposits. We haven't really thought this through. We thought this would be a big money grab. It's worth $17.3 trillion. I listened to Pepe Escobar. He's a geopolitical analyst, and he travels from country to country to country. You never know quite where he is. A brilliant guy, by the way. And he was on the other day with Dialogue Works, and he said that he spoke directly with oil experts from the Persian Gulf and China alike. And he said that America investors would have to put in some $183 billion in existing infrastructure of their own money over a period of roughly 16 or so years to even be able to begin pumping 3 million barrels of oil in Venezuela each day. In other estimates I've been hearing, it says you need to put in about $100 million for 1 million barrels of oil. That's a lot of money, folks, don't you think, right now? That's quite a sum. Hell of a return, don't you think? I mean, this is obviously ridiculous. Even at that point, it would still be less than what Saudi Arabia puts out, 11.4 million barrels of oil per day. Russia, 11.1 million. Canada, 5.7 million. Iran, 4.7 million. Iraq, 4.4. China, 4.2. UAE, 3.8 million. Brazil, 3.5. There's another BRICS country right there. And Kuwait, roughly 2.9 to 3.2 million barrels of oil per day. Now, the irony of all this is that we, the United States, put out the most oil by far of any other country in the world. 19.4 million barrels of oil we produce in this country a day. Why are we so concerned about Venezuela? Why are we so concerned about Venezuelan oil? Yes, it's a large deposit. It's a lot. 3.03 billion barrels of oil in the ground there. Here's the problem, though. This is the heaviest crude oil in the world. It takes a lot of resources to get it out of the ground. It's not like in the movie There Will Be Blood where, they strike oil and it just shoots into the sky and you're going, hey, we made a lot of money. That's not happening here. You have to have a lot of resources. You have to have a lot of infrastructure in place to get it out of the ground. It's not easy to get out of the ground. It's so thick. But now you're even getting large businesses like ExxonMobil, right? He's coming out, the CEO, Darren Woods, is coming out and saying this isn't really a keen investment. Listen to what he had to say just the other day.
We have a very long history in Venezuela. In fact, we first got into Venezuela back in 1940s. We've had our assets seized there twice. And so you can imagine to re-enter a third time would require some pretty significant changes from what we've historically seen here and what is currently the state. If we look at the legal and commercial constructs and frameworks in place today in Venezuela, today it's uninvestable. And so significant changes have to be made to those commercial frameworks, the legal system. There has to be durable investment protections, and there has to be a change to the hydrocarbon laws in the country. We're confident that with this administration and President Trump working hand in hand with the Venezuelan government, that those changes can be put in place.
But who's going to invest in it? Who's going to invest in it? That's the problem. You have these large deposits. Of course, that's one thing. But getting it out of the ground is another thing. And you just heard him say it's uninvestable right now. I don't think that was the message President Trump wanted to hear. And again, I don't want to give you an entire rundown of how oil is produced in Venezuela. But let's come to terms of what's going on. You have businessmen saying that, again, this is not something we can facilitate. This is not something we can do. So here we go. Let's listen to this, though, okay? I'm going to give... I know it's a lot for some people to understand due to, obviously, what's going on, but let's understand this. They have the heaviest crude oil by gravity in the ground there. That's what this is. This is heavy crude oil. And this crude coming out of the ground in Venezuela needs to go through lots of refining even before it's even shipped. It doesn't just pop out of the ground and we put it in a barrel and say, let's send it off. So again, it first needs to be steam injected, by the way, to reduce the viscosity. That's the thickness of the oil itself. And then it's got to be mixed with 0.3 barrels of dilutants, like lighter crude, other things like naphtha, of course. They've got to put it in just to, again, reduce the viscosity. Then it has to be upgraded. They've got to remove the sulfur content in a process called desulfurification. Again, taking out the hydrogen chains. That's what Mr. Woods was referring to. These long hydrogen chains that are in the oil. There's other contaminants like nickel and what have you inside it. All this has got to be taken out before it's even shipped. So then you finally get to the last process, and then there's other processes as well. The synthetic crude production, again, would be the final step before it can even be shipped to a refinery inside the Gulf of America via oil tanker to begin refining and then later distribution. Doesn't sound so lucrative anymore. And by the way, sending it by oil tanker is going to cost even more money because it's not coming through a pipeline. We get most of our crude oil from Canada, and it comes through a pipeline. It's a much cheaper and easier process. It goes right to our refineries, and then it's produced right there. That's not happening here. There's all these other additional steps. But before we get off the topic of Venezuela's regime change, right, let's understand this too. Pepe Escobar said this as well. He said that if Delcy Rodriguez, by the way, her father too was a communist revolutionary inside Venezuela, part of this group called the Socialist League. He said that if a puppet president is installed, think about a Maria Corina Machado, there's going to be chaos in the streets. There's going to be humanitarian crises beyond what is already happening, likely to follow if they take out the entire government. What did I tell you Larry Johnson said? You got to take out the entire military or get the entire military to follow you. That's not happening in Venezuela. So what you're going to have is military and rebels alike in the streets with guns to rule over everybody. They would be the ones governing Caracas right now. Again, if you were to take out Miss Rodriguez. Something else I want to say regarding this, again, decapitation strike, by the way. If we went in thinking that, this illegal seizure of oil is just going to simply stifle China and Russia and Iran, which is, again, what I said before. There's a bigger picture behind the oil we're getting because we're not going to be selling it to these countries. That's who Venezuela ships their oil to, by and large. We're mistaken by this. And just to give you a little rundown, China imports roughly 20% of its oil supply. 2% of that comes into the country that they need each and every day comes from Venezuela. So they're only losing a very small fraction of what they produce and import, and not anything major, by the way. So China essentially really is energy sufficient right now. And all they import is about 730,000 barrels per day Very little number. And they can get that easily from Iran, Saudi Arabia, Russia, other BRICS countries, by the way. I just told you Brazil, Iran are also very, very big producers on the list of countries that produce petroleum. And the other problem is they'll still be evading the petrodollar. That's what we are there for. Venezuela stopped selling their oil in petrodollars. They started selling in the Chinese yuan when they would send it to China, among other countries. So, the one final point I want to make before we finish this today, by cutting off China as a buyer is also going to hurt people like Darren Woods and ExxonMobil. Why? Because you're cutting off oil to China. China's got contracts with Venezuela, right? And again, there's going to be legal battles now. Again, despite all this, it's our oil. There's going to be legal disputes and whatnot, legal battles. Again, I hope it was worth it, but I think it's dubious at best to say that it was. This would be tying people up in courts. It's not going to go over as well as we thought. And by the way, we already stole 1.9 million barrels of oil from them and a ship to boot, by the way. So again, not a good thing, folks. None of this is any good. I don't think this is beneficial at all. But I wanted to kind of update you on what's happening globally because this is going to start heating up very, very soon. In all these places, too, by the way. But the first one is going to be Iran. I don't really know what Venezuela's fate will be. Trump came out and said that he's getting along with Delcy Rodriguez. I don't know what that means. She wanted Maduro to be returned, so he went out and said they want to sell 50 million barrels to the United States. Oh, okay. How long is that going to take? I'm told it's supposed to take 71 days to get all 50 million barrels to the United States. We've got to understand this. And the same thing goes with the investments that we've been talking about. We say, hey, we've got $21 trillion of investment coming in the United States. That's fine, but over what period of time? Where are these investments? And who's going to see the productivity of this $21 trillion, so-called? It's not adding up, is it, folks? And by the way, I wanted to talk about this, too. I know we have a couple of minutes remaining in today's show, but I wanted to go over this just really, really quickly with you. This is in USA Today, and it says here that the lawmakers have stated that a third party should force the DOJ to release the Epstein files. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? We're now 3 weeks over the deadline to release all the documents. We've got zero explanation as to why it hasn't been released. Interesting. Khanna, Thomas Massie are now asking Judge Engelmayer to appoint an independent monitor to force the DOJ now to complete its required disclosure of the Jeffrey Epstein investigation under the Jeffrey Epstein Files Transparency Act. That's not so transparent. On January 3rd, folks, the day we took Maduro, we were supposed to have a press conference as to where these files were. Why are they not being released as per law? Yet we never heard anything about it. Isn't that very, very interesting? And now, of course, we're talking about Iran. Everyone's focused on Iran. We're talking about Venezuela. Now we're talking about Greenland, Cuba, Mexico, Nicaragua, Colombia. Let's just take over the whole world, why don't we? I mean, we can barely take control of what's happening inside of our borders, let alone outside. But look at this. On January 5th, Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche told Engelmayer that they would have their staff review nearly 13,000 documents, but still had 2 million now to review. Think about that. They have over 2 million documents now they have to go through before they can even release this to us. Release the damn files. Show us what's in there. I mean, this is ridiculous. I can't believe we're even still talking about this. By the way, before I finish, I do want to say one more thing, though. I had two other great articles I wanted to go over with you. I ran out of time, unfortunately, but it says here on Sunday, this is in the Washington Examiner, Powell, that'd be Jerome Powell, announced that the DOJ had launched a criminal investigation into his Senate testimony about renovations at the Fed headquarters in D.C. President Trump has expressed concerns about the cost overruns, estimated to be $2.5 billion. What the hell do we need to spend $2.5 billion in renovations for? At the Fed, which again is a private organization. We don't even really run it. says here, but the president claims the projects can cost up to $3.1 billion. Renovations at the Fed headquarters. Let them do it. How much money have they stolen from us, for God's sakes? Unbelievable. Now, the stock market, as a result of all this, has taken a dip today because they're acting nervously about this issue with Powell at the Fed. Look at this. The U.S. dollar, this is the kicker of all this. Again, they have all fallen, 0.5%, 0.3%, throughout the day. But here's the problem. The U.S. dollar dropped today by 0.3%, folks. Yep. 0.3%, but they're claiming that 3-year Treasury bonds rose roughly by the same amount, barely, by the way. Meanwhile, gold now jumped to a new record of 2.5%. Look at that. Gold hitting extraordinary highs. Again, usually a sign of anxiety among Wall Street investors. No kidding. No kidding. We have so many things going wrong with what's happening in this country. And the markets are responding in kind, aren't they? I think so, folks. By the way, tomorrow I'm going to talk about what's happening in Minnesota with you. And I got a great article about Gavin Newsom in California I got to go over with you, too, tomorrow. So don't forget about that. Folks, thank you so much for, again, listening to the show today. I appreciate you so much. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you'll share it with other people to get the truth out. Make sure you're staying prepped. Store up your food, water, ammo, money, gold, anything you need to be self-sufficient. As always stay prepared. Always stay prepped. Anytime you're going out, too, by the way, folks. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy the rest of it. I'll see you back here tomorrow, as always, for more groundbreaking news. Until then, be good. Stay great. God bless.